All right, so I think I need a little bit of engagement. The channel's been kind of sluggish lately, and so I thought to myself, I said, what could you talk about that's going to get a lot of people mad at you? Just to get some engagement. Do a little rage baiting. And I thought to myself, I thought long and hard, and I said, you know what? You should talk about Bitcoin. So let's begin. All right, all right. Well, I am on record as saying that I don't hate Bitcoin, and I'm not jealous of Bitcoiners, but I don't own any Bitcoin, and I probably never will. Now, I say probably. I do mean, like, I feel like I never will, but I say probably because, you don't know what the future holds, my friend. You know what I mean? You don't know what the future holds. In any case, what I thought I'd do is explain myself just a little bit. And I know I can already see a lot of you Bitcoiners out there. I don't understand Bitcoin. And you know what? You're right. I don't understand Bitcoin. So there you go. I'll just say it on the outset. There's many things about Bitcoin that I don't understand. But there are some things that I do. And I wanted to what I'll do is I'm going to start and talk about the things that I like about Bitcoin. And then maybe I'll butter you up a little bit just so you can hear me out for the things that I don't like about Bitcoin or I'm suspicious of regarding Bitcoin, things of that nature. Now, Bitcoin, honestly, I was the exact kind of person that Bitcoin was targeting. And of course, I'm not going to lie to you. Of course, I regret not buying it when it was 20 cents and I first heard about it, kind of thing. Because it was aimed right at me. I was a smart alecky libertarian, thought I was so cool. I already knew about the fiat money scam and all that kind of thing. And so I was primed for Bitcoin. And I heard about Bitcoin, and I remember thinking, oh, that sounds interesting. Let me look into it. And then I never looked into it, right? And so if I would have bought the 20-cent Bitcoin, it doesn't matter how many I bought, I would be a much richer person today. Now, I don't think that I would have necessarily held for this entire run. I probably would have sold when it hit 10,000 because I would have thought to myself, there's no way this is going to get more than 10,000. And so I would have been richer, but not, I wouldn't be a millionaire probably. I mean, who knows? Maybe I would have held. I don't know. Maybe I would have become a true believer, just like all you Bitcoiners out there. Who knows what I would have done? But I never like to say, well, I would be this rich if I just would have held on to this asset. I don't do that because the temptation to sell on the way up, I don't know what I would have done in that situation. Who knows? Who knows? But, maybe if I didn't sell at 10,000, I would have sold at 50,000 or 100,000. Who knows, right? Although I guess it's at 100,000 now, so I guess I would be holding it still. But in any case, so I was hardwired to try to be interested in Bitcoin. But what I will say, and so I understand the sell, right, to some degree. I like the idea that it's hard capped at a supply. There's only 21 million Bitcoins and however many quadrillion Satoshis, that kind of thing. There's never going to be any more. It's predictable. You can't debase it. I love all that stuff. I mean, that speaks right to me. You can't debase it like you debase the dollar. I get it. The dollar is toast at some point. I understand all of that. That's the first thing that kind of annoys me about Bitcoin. I didn't want to get into this so early, but I will say it. The minute you say I'm not a Bitcoiner, they say, what do you think? Fiat's the best? Like, they assume you don't know anything about fiat. Well, I know a lot about fiat, right? So I like that. I think that's a very good thing. I also like the idea of having this, divisible, portable asset that you could send to anywhere at any time, assuming you have an internet connection and electricity. I like that. That's actually a really cool functionality. It's not as clunky as other things. I like having cash, and I like the ability of having something that I can hold, that I can hand to somebody. I like that, but I do think that there's a place, of course, for digital exchanges and digital transactions. I think that's awesome. I really think that's a good thing. And personally, I think that's the best part about Bitcoin. It got people thinking in those terms, which of course the banks have been doing this for a long time. I mean, most dollars are just digits, right? It's just digital anyway. That's another thing that a lot of people say, you don't understand. I mean, fiat currency is digits. And I know, I do understand. Most dollars aren't actually physical dollars. They're digits on a screen, and so digital currency has been, a thing for a long time. I like that too. I like the ability of sending something digitally that quickly in a way that is very transparent and, in theory, shouldn't be able to be manipulated. So I do like that. You know what I mean? Like, you could just add digits to the screen. That's what they do. That's what they do when they're printing money. They don't actually print money. Although they do that, but usually they're just adding digits to the screen, that kind of thing. So I like that part of it too. I also like the idea of holding the asset yourself. You have your own custody. You don't necessarily have to trust a third party with it, right? I mean, you could if you wanted to. A lot of people do that. They have other people hold the keys or whatever. But I like the idea of being able to hold it if you wanted to. Like, if circumstances change and all of a sudden, I don't trust Coinbase so much anymore, you can hold the keys yourself. You can have it yourself. You can hold it yourself. And so I do like that as well. I think that's very good. And that's one of the problems with gold, right? You don't want to hold too much gold on your own. And so you do have to find, I don't know, a safety deposit box or a vault or something like that, a third party that you can trust to hold some of it, because it's too risky to hold too much of it on your own. So that's one of the problems with gold. But and it theoretically is a problem with Bitcoin too, although it's a little bit less of a problem. So anyway, I like that thing. I like the idea of self-custody and having that kind of safety, that security of custodying your own asset yourself. I do like that. So I like certain things about Bitcoin, and I think the technology behind it is really good, and I think is very useful. The tokenization of assets, I think, is something that is going to continue into the future, most likely. Now, but here's where I'm going to have to, curb your enthusiasm a little bit. And these are the things I don't understand or I don't like about Bitcoin. Number one, I don't like when it feels like I'm being sold a bill of goods. You know what I mean? Listen, I'm not trying to insult all you Bitcoiners out there, but some of you guys go way too far. You just oversell it. Just a little bit too much. I'll give you an idea of what I mean, right? They'll say things like this: Bitcoin is hope. And they'll look into the distance. Bitcoin is hope. And it's like, I hear you. I understand, but like, I don't know. It just seems like a little much to me. You know what I mean? It seems like a little much to me. And then you get these people that are like, oh yeah, Bitcoin's going to 10 million, and all this kind of stuff. And there's just, I'm okay with people being enthusiastic. I get it, but I don't know. It's just, I don't like that feeling that I'm being oversold, if you know what I mean. What does that mean? Bitcoin is hope, right? Or this is the other thing. But Bitcoin is digital energy. I'll be honest. I don't get it. I don't understand what you mean. I mean, it takes energy to use Bitcoin. I get that part. So there's an effort that goes into transacting in Bitcoin and mining Bitcoin, a lot of effort and a lot of energy, and it's very expensive and all of that. But Bitcoin is energy? Can I plug my computer into Bitcoin and run my computer because my computer uses energy? I plug my computer into the holes in the wall. That's energy that I can use. Can I use the energy in the Bitcoin? Well, no, not really. It's a marketing tactic, I think. Bitcoin is energy. Come on, man. Come on. I don't like that kind of stuff, and it makes me feel like someone's trying to pull the rug over my eyes. Now, to a certain degree, I understand some of this marketing stuff, because one of the things that you need to do in order to, pump the price of Bitcoin up, which is the goal of most people, is to pump the price of Bitcoin up. You need to increase adoption, right? You need more people to buy Bitcoin. And so you need to have a lot of buyers out there, but not that many people wanting to sell to drive the price up. Now, in order to do that, you're going to have to convince a lot of people that Bitcoin is something worth buying. And people have been very successful at this, at least in certain generations. The younger generations typically favor Bitcoin. And but you constantly need to do that in order to pump the numbers up, right? And so they say things that are just like, it's marketing copy, but does it really make sense? Bitcoin is hope. I mean, I understand the idea of Bitcoin, buying something that holds its value as the money, value goes down, is going to increase the money value of the thing. And so that's good because then you can actually save where maybe you couldn't save before, right? You can't save these. I've been saying that for the last few episodes. If you save these, you're screwing yourself, right? So where's the hope of me, building up a nice little nest egg where I can acquire things and have a foundation of, an insurance policy for my future? Well, I mean, I can understand saying, well, Bitcoin's that hope, it's hope. Okay, I mean, I get it, but it's just a little, I don't know, it rubs me the wrong way. And the Bitcoin is energy thing, that one has always mystified me. I mean, who do you think you're fooling? Bitcoin is energy? Come on, man. I don't like that. I don't like that. So that's number one. I don't like a lot of, and a lot of the biggest Bitcoiners out there, they're really weird people. Like, they're just creepy. This Michael Saylor guy, just go to his Twitter feed. It's just very strange and weird. He certainly strikes me as a shyster, a little bit of a charlatan, in my opinion. But in any case, so that's one thing I don't like about Bitcoin. The other thing I don't like about Bitcoin is that the intrinsic utility of Bitcoin, in my opinion, is questionable. Like, unlike gold, there is an intrinsic utility there, right? Now, the value is, of course, subjective, right? What I value that gold, as is subjective. And it's the same thing with Bitcoin, of course, but there is an intrinsic utility there, right? Because the gold has properties that can be used in various types of ways. I've mentioned we use it in electronics, we use it for jewelry, we use it for all kinds of things. And so yes, a lot of the value we assign to gold is subjective, same with Bitcoin. There is an underlying utility there that doesn't exist with Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is just digits in a computer system. It's just computer code. And so there isn't the same utility that way. And I think, and I know a lot of, especially the Bitcoin maximalists, will say that there's never another Bitcoin. There's just Bitcoin and then there's shit coins, and all that kind of stuff. And I understand that. It's obviously different than the crypto space, which most Bitcoiners agree with me that it's full of shady characters and scams. But theoretically, there really are theoretical that you could think of replacements for Bitcoin. There could be a much better Bitcoin coming in the future. And there could be a situation, you can imagine it, where somebody figures out how to hack Bitcoin, and then now it's totally useless, and you need a better, more secure Bitcoin, and you could see that kind of thing happening. And I'm not saying that's around the corner or anything like that, but you could theoretically see how it could happen without too much, imagination, right? Like, to figure that out. And you don't have the same problem with gold. People will try to make the same problem with gold. They'll say, well, one day we'll be able to have synthetic gold. Maybe, but I just, honestly, that one takes a little bit more of a leap for me to figure out that people could do that, to make synthetic gold. Or what they'll say is, well, eventually we're going to mine asteroids, and I mean, that one really doesn't move the needle for me, we'll mine asteroids. Yeah, I'm sure that'll be a very cost-effective strategy right around the corner, that we're going to be mining asteroids and getting a whole bunch of gold out of them. I just don't know that's that realistic. Now, theoretically, I could see something like that happening, but how much is it really going to increase the supply of gold? I mean, is it going to be to the point where now we have gold inflation, where there's just this massive gold printing that's able to be done through either synthetic gold or mining asteroids? I don't think so. I think the supply will increase. I mean, that's obvious. The supply of gold will increase because we're still mining gold, right? I mean, there's not that much out there, but there still is some out there. And so, of course it's going to increase, but it's going to increase at a very predictable, very steady pace. I don't think we're going to have the same situation as we have with this. In fact, I think it's much more likely that we'll have a Bitcoin substitute that'll create a similar situation that we have with this. In any case, the intrinsic utility thing is something I really can't get over. The gold does have intrinsic utility. Bitcoin, it's a little bit harder for me to see that kind of thing. I mean, there's really no use for it outside of its own situation, its own network. I would also say too that there's when it comes to gold versus Bitcoin, I think one of the other things that I always hear is that, well, it's it's an improvement on gold, and it's a bet on humanity because we're constantly innovating and things like that, and gold is just this sort of like this barbarous relic, and that's what they were using for money when we were cavemen and all that kind of stuff, and we can do better than that. Gold is just this ancient thing that a bunch of borderline chimpanzees were using, right? And obviously I don't believe in evolution, so that really doesn't have that much effect on me, but I actually don't understand why that would be a notch in the Bitcoin favor, though, is what I'm trying to say. Like, I do think we should look for technological advancements and utilize them and lean into them. Like, I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think that there's a lot of good there. It could be bad, but there's a lot of good there. But actually, I look at gold being valued, highly for forever. That's actually a notch in the favor of gold, right? Like, there was really never a time where gold wasn't just obviously inherently valued by people. It's almost like it's hardwired into our brain. Like in the Bible, when the Lord says that the word of God is more precious than gold, very fine gold, there's no expectation that you don't know what he's talking about, right? Like, it is assumed that human beings find gold, in very fine gold, extremely valuable. And what he's saying is that the word of God is more valuable than that. Even in the book of Genesis, very early, I forget, maybe it might be the second or third chapter or something, he talks about the gold that is found in this land. It's very good gold there. And it's just assumed that, like, yeah, there was gold there from the beginning. And by the way, it's valuable. You know what I mean? It's very valuable. So I actually look at that gold having that value, and it has intrinsic utility, but it also has almost like, it feels like there's like a hardwired value that we assign to it that I don't think is likely to ever change. You know what I mean? There was a great episode of the Twilight Zone where there's these guys that travel through time, and they steal some gold and they travel through time, and then when they wake up later, in the future, they go to find the gold, and it turns out that gold's no longer valuable in the future. Like, people look at this like, what is that? And they're like, oh, I think I know what that is. It's gold. Yeah. People used to really like that, but they don't like it anymore. I just don't think that's gonna happen. You know what I mean? On the one hand, I want to embrace technological innovation. On the other hand, I don't think that's necessarily good for Bitcoin over and against gold. Now, I do personally think that there is a lot of opportunity for tokenization of the ownership claims of small amounts of gold that you can transact in gold. Peter Schiff's doing something like that. There's been a lot of companies that do this kind of stuff. In fact, I think they even have a gold tether. There's a tether that's backed by gold. And nobody uses them, but I could actually see the value in something like that. I don't own any of that stuff, and I don't think I will in the immediate future, but I could actually see the value of that because, you could actually hold gold, spend gold, even small amounts. Obviously a gold coin right now is worth $4,000. You can't buy a cup of coffee with a gold coin, right? But I could see the value in something like that, where you just have a credit card or a debit card or something, and you just spend some gold. Meanwhile, all of your money is held in gold, and you're just spending it, little by little through these tokens. I could see something like that catching on, and I do like that. So the innovation side, I want to embrace it, but innovation is not automatically an improvement. I don't think. You know what I mean? And I think that's a mistake a lot of people make, where innovation's automatically an improvement. It's really not. And in fact, I would argue probably a lot of the time it isn't. Especially with something like gold that has just been valued for forever. You know what I mean? Like, it's assumed that you value gold, and pretty much everybody does. Like, obviously there's some exceptions, but it's not it's just something that it almost just is. It's like part of being a human that you value gold. I don't know. I mean, I just don't see that as I don't think that's actually a point in the favor of Bitcoin. There are some downsides to gold, and I think I've talked about these downsides to gold. Obviously, walking around with a bunch of gold coins in your pocket, probably not something that most people want to be doing. In fact, it's probably why we have bills and stuff like that used to be convertible into gold. People preferred carrying these things around because they knew they were backed by gold. And it's not that they wanted to have paper, like, oh, I really need that paper. But it's just easier, it's just much easier. The problem is, though, then you have to trust the person that is going to convert your paper into gold. And that is one of the big advantages of Bitcoin that I said in the beginning, that you don't have to necessarily trust anybody. But at the end of the day, I think, in human life, like, you kind of do have to trust people from time to time. And so while it's not perfect, I think it's kind of necessary. And even with Bitcoin, a lot of people, they don't think they actually need to trust anybody, but you actually kind of do. There's a lot of things that Bitcoin relies on that other people have control over. Electricity, internet connection, things like that. People like to pretend like that's just stuff that, oh yeah, I mean, I always will have access to that. I mean, maybe not. Maybe the critical time when you really need access to it, you don't have it. I don't know. There's also some other downsides to gold. There's a lot of manipulation in gold. This is true of Bitcoin too. There's a lot of manipulation in Bitcoin as well. Financialization and schemes and things like that. But gold is just rampant. They've got all kinds of paper markets that suppress the price of gold and different ETFs and stuff like that. There's some of those in Bitcoin as well. And there's also, of course, the governments love gold. Well, they don't really love gold, but they hold gold. And you can never really trust the government. Who knows how much gold the United States has? I mean, does the United States really have all the gold they say they do? A lot of people doubt it. Does China actually have as little gold as they say they have? Well, a lot of people doubt that as well. So there's always some weirdness with that as well. And so gold, there's some downsides to gold as well. But in any case, I do think, though, that Bitcoiners and gold people have a lot in common. You know what I mean? We understand the problems with fiat. We don't need to be friends, but we could be like neighbors with a nice fence between us. You know what I mean? One of the things that does confuse me a little bit is just, how much vitriol Bitcoiners have against guys like me who doesn't own any and doesn't really like it that much. There's a lot of vitriol. And there's some on the other side as well. But yeah, I think that's it. That about covers it. Oh, yeah. I don't know, guys. One of the things that really mystified me, this kind of really got me thinking about the heavy marketing push when it comes to Bitcoin, is Tucker the other day was saying that he thinks the CIA created Bitcoin. And, he was probably just trying to get attention like I am right now. And create a little bit of firestorm. But what I did notice that I was very confused by is a lot of Bitcoiners saying, well, even if they did create it, it doesn't matter. If the CIA created Bitcoin, it doesn't matter because we're using it now and it's great. It's the greatest thing ever. And it's going to go to 5 million, in a few years and all this kind of stuff. And to me, I got to be honest with you. How can you say it doesn't matter if the CIA created it? Because if the CIA created it, that is a tremendous risk factor that you're adding into the whole equation. Because if they added it for a reason, and I don't think the CIA is incompetent. So there's got to be some reason why if they did create, I don't know if they did, but if they did, that is a tremendous risk to hold Bitcoin and to imagine that it's going to go to 5 million in the future or whatever you think it's going to happen. And then doesn't the CIA own a lot of Bitcoin then? If they created it, so they're Satoshi Nakamoto, if they're Satoshi, they hold a lot of Bitcoin. So how could you, and I'm assuming, and let me say this, I'm assuming as a Bitcoiner you don't trust the CIA. Maybe you do, and if you do, then knock yourself out because there's really no risk for you because you trust the CIA. But if you don't trust the CIA, and then they created Bitcoin, and then they're Satoshi Nakamoto, and then who knows how many other wallets they control. How can you not see that as a risk? He owns a tremendous stockpile of Bitcoin that at any time the wallet can wake up and, I don't know, dump shares, dump Bitcoin or do whatever it is he's going to do. Like, that is a tremendous risk factor to your money. That's your money. And you've got this shadowy entity that holds a whole bunch of Bitcoin. The wallet hasn't been touched in years, and it's really new, so that's not that long of a track record for the wallet to do nothing. I don't know, man. Like, to hear Bitcoiners tell me that that's not a tremendous risk, again, it just, you're selling it too hard. Like, you kind of have to, at some point, admit that there are some downsides to Bitcoin. And if you're not willing to admit that there's any downsides to Bitcoin, that makes me even more suspicious that you're trying to get me to join your direct sales organization. You know what I mean? Your Ponzi scheme, you know? I'm not calling Bitcoin a Ponzi scheme, but it makes me suspicious when people try to act like it's perfection. It is perfection. And then, yeah, I'll end there. I was going to go over some Michael Saylor quotes, but they're just too weird to even know what to do with. There's one about Bitcoin being a swarm of cyber hornets serving the goddess of wisdom and the energy walls, and it gets weird, bros. It gets weird. In any case, I got to go. Hope you found this video helpful, entertaining. God bless.